Good morning. It's rough draft day. So I want to just say a couple things before we get started with our day. And first of all, I want to make sure that you realize that by doing all the work that we've done in the last couple of days on the outline, it's going to make the rough draft much easier to write, and it's all going to be in logical format. Now, when we first sit down at the computer and get ready to do this, what's the very first thing we do? That's right. We open up our EasyBib project because we may need to add something in there. Eventually we're going to use it. Let's look it over real quick. Run down there and make sure that we don't have anything duplicated. Quick look over. Looks good. Looks good. We have the script. All right. Good. Okay, so let's take a look at the outline. One of the common problems that I see is that students have a bit of a tricky time with paragraph development. And I'm going to demystify that as we go through this particular phase of our essay. Now remember, when we transfer this information from the outline to the essay, we're not going to put in any of this stuff. Believe me, I've seen it done before, and you can't find them all. So I'll show you how to do that in a minute. First, let's mark the paragraphs just to make this a full educational experience. In this particular introductory paragraph, what is the thesis statement, or the topic of the topic sentence? That's right, it's this one, the thesis statement. Now let's look at the next section of the essay that comes after the introduction, and that's right, it's the definition of terms. And remember, the definition of terms is going to be several paragraphs. And as we go through the outline, we can make sure that all those paragraphs make sense. The first section of definition of terms was where we need to summarize the film. So as we look through here, in this first paragraph, what's the topic sentence? That's right, this is the topic sentence. And so everything in the paragraph has something to do with what these guys are on in their adventure. 3 key misadventures. Okay? Let's look at this next paragraph that was the second part of the summary. Alonzo provided a number of challenges for Jake to master. The first lesson for Jake was a drug bust. Alonzo spotted teenagers making a drug deal, and then he berated the youngsters, and Jake watched as Alonzo, I'm going to just fix that. Jake watched as Alonzo touted about as a bad bass. Let's just hyphenate that so we can see that. I have students sometimes say, is it all right to cuss in an essay? Well, your tone of your essay sort of can match the tone of the film. I mean, we could change that cocky, overconfident, but that's kind of, we'll think about that though. Okay, so then the rest of the paragraph, the second lesson for Jake, was the apprehension of the 2 men attempting to rape a young girl in MacArthur Park. Alonzo looked on as Jake arrested the 2 felons. Alonzo then forced Jake at gunpoint to smoke the pipe. Next up, Alonzo introduced Jake to drug lord and friend Roger. What's the topic sentence of this paragraph? That's right. In this case, it's the first sentence. Alonzo provided a number of challenges for Jake to master. Everything in this paragraph needs to be about a challenge for Jake to master, doesn't it? Okay, so here we have the first lesson, and we have the second lesson, and then we're going to have a transition sentence where he's going to introduce Jake to his friend Roger. Why don't we put Roger all in the same category as these other things? See if you can guess. Nobody's looking. That's right, because the next paragraph is too long, and the introduction to his friend Roger is going to take much more than a simple sentence. Remember, what we're doing right now is we're defining terms. First is a summary of the film, and we can't have a summary of the film without explaining that within this story this is going to happen. So now we start the next paragraph, and what's the next paragraph going to be about? That's right, his friend Roger. Quoted by some critics as a secondary antagonist, Roger controlled a multi-million-dollar drug operation. A product of the world of the story, Roger established the connection between Jake and Alonzo. In an early scene, Alonzo took Jake to Roger's house. Now this is important because this is the first time in this essay, and we're on page 2. This is the first time in the essay that we've ever introduced any evidence. And so it's important that we have a piece of evidence in this definition of terms. Otherwise, the reader's going to say, are you sure that's what happened? Okay, so Roger compares Jake's naivety to Alonzo's early days. This is important because Roger says Jake is just like Alonzo used to be. And so this is a short little quote. We didn't need the whole speech. We just needed this little quote. Think this greenhorn can handle undercover? Roger scrutinizes Jake a bit, smiles and nods. You were just like him. Same silly-ass look and everything. Saving the goddamn world. That lasted a week. You see how important that is to our argument about the whole thing? Okay, so through Roger, Jake learned that Alonzo had once been in his shoes. Because of his assignment in the world, Alonzo changed. The plot moved forward again. Okay, now, let's look at this paragraph. What is the topic sentence of this paragraph? That's right, it's this. Because we introduced Roger and what Roger did, because we're in definition of terms. He's a product of the world of the story. Roger established a connection between Jake and Alonzo. Jake's naivety to Alonzo's early days. And that's that little scene. Okay. Now, through Roger, Jake learned that Alonzo had once been in his shoes. Because of his assignment in this world, Alonzo changed. Okay, so we had the quote, and we always need to make a statement about the quote. And we say, through Roger, Jake learned that Alonzo had once been in his shoes, but because of his assignment in this world, Alonzo changed. Is that the end of that paragraph? That's right. It is the end of the paragraph because it was a transition sentence that leads the reader to say, oh, okay, well, then what happened? Well, here's what happened. As the plot moved forward, complications occurred, and Jake was ultimately betrayed by his mentor when he refused to take the rap for the raid. For a raid, because we haven't told him about the raid yet. Be right back. Okay, I'm going to change my mind, and I'm going to keep this all part of the same paragraph, because this Alonzo changed. What did he change to? As the plot moved forward, the complications occurred, and Jake was ultimately betrayed by his mentor when he refused to take the rap for the raid. Raid on Roger. It was during that raid later in the film. Raid on Roger. It was during that event later in the film that Alonzo and his band of crooked cops confiscated Roger's house and money. And killed him. Alonzo wanted Jake to be named the shooter and promised that the story would be reported in Jake's favor. The way Alonzo handled the situation revealed his most glaring tragic flaw, greed. So now the reader says, okay, so we're going to be looking at Alonzo's tragic flaw? Yes. The next definition is Alonzo as an antagonist. So let's look at this little section right here. Okay, let's look it over. I'm just going to be quiet. You look it over too. Okay, the more I've gotten into writing this essay, the more I realize it needs to be in present tense. And it's not as hard as it seems, because I'm just going to go up here and I'm going to replace was with is. I've already done this, so it's going to show none, but okay, I'm going to change something that has an ed ending, like possessed. Past tense will be possessed. Present tense will be possesses. Of course, it's going to mess some things up, but I'll be able to find them because they'll highlight them with this blue underscore. Okay. Moving on. We'll worry about that later, but I am going to switch it over to the present tense. Okay. That's done. That's done. See, it's going to make it real easy to find those. Okay. And we're down here still in definition of terms, and we're defining him as a protagonist. Okay. A number of critics analyze Alonzo from the perspective of an antagonist who thwarts the progress of a naive young officer by teaching the rookie the rules of Echo Park World. In that role, many critics claim that Alonzo is the antagonist of the film. Okay, that's all in my own words, right? So what is this paragraph going to be about? Exactly. Going to be about, in that role, critics claim that Alonzo is the antagonist of the film. I disagree, and as you know, that's a big point that we've got to prove. So now I go to the article. In his article, Movie Story Types Buddy Picture, Scott Myers describes Alonzo as a, quote, mentor turns antagonistic character that has the unpredictable scene-stealing badassness to give Hoyt his obstacles and conflict, tests that grow into increasingly unethical and life-threatening situations. Myers. That's who wrote this article. I see, this is where I argue with that, I see where Myers believes that Alonzo was once a mentor. Myers admits that Alonzo was. Do you see? I hope you're seeing that this is a mess for everybody. Was, once upon a time, a well-intentioned police officer. I agree that a well-intended character would be in a protagonist position. I'm going to pause here real quickly. Do you know what an antagonist is particularly? I assume you do, but just in case you need to see why this part of our essay is so important, I just want to show you this little definition of an antagonist. Nowhere is it written that a story has to have a bad guy. The obstacles that stand between your character and his overall story goal could be any number of non-human manifestations. Okay? So the force that wants the protagonist to fail can be another human being, or in our case, it can be the world of the story. Right? We've already established, or we're going to establish if we haven't already, that Alonzo wanted to be a good cop who would save the world. That thing that happened that didn't allow him to become that. He didn't go to Studio City or Encino or Beverly Hills to be a police officer. He was assigned the hardest streets in Los Angeles. Okay, just pause to do that. All right, I'm going back. So this is the part of the essay where I'm proving that Alonzo could be interpreted as the protagonist. In many of the essays you'll be writing, the antagonist is clear. In this one, we're taking just a little bit of a liberty with that and going a little different way with it. Okay, so this is the quote, and the topic sentence is this. All right, and this is his thing. This is my response back to that thing, that position of his. And it is clear from this speech that Alonzo had working knowledge. It is clear from his speech that Alonzo had working knowledge of a level of professionalism that includes easy tasks. Because of circumstances, Alonzo is taken from that safe world to the hellscape of Echo Park. So we've defined that term, haven't we? We defined we've defined Alonzo as a protagonist. Okay. We have, this is where the article starts. That was the transition sentence. So in here, where is the topic sentence? This is a fairly bit longer paragraph because we have this nice little quote, and we know that it's on page 17. So instead of citing it here, I cited it there in the actual sentence. Tell me what the topic sentence is for this paragraph. You look and I look. Okay, you're right. It's this sentence, Myers, because I'm saying what Myers believes, and then I'm saying that Myers is wrong. Well, that he just didn't take it far enough in his analysis. Right? So this sentence, Myers admits that Alonzo was, once upon a time, a well-intentioned police officer. That's what makes him a protagonist. The hero who is trying to get something accomplished. All right? The rest of that finishes up. And our transition sentence is hellscape of Echo Park. What does the reader want to hear now? That's right. What was the hellscape of Echo Park? Yes, good. Okay, so we're talking about the hellscape of Echo Park. When I go through and copy this over into the rough draft, I'm going to be super excited by these yellow highlights, because these yellow highlights show me the beginning and the ending, or they show me where what's contained in a paragraph. It shows me the topic sentence. It makes it so much easier. Now here we just have this, we're going to describe Echo Park, right? Actually proves my point that the world of the story is the antagonist. When he describes Alonzo's relationship with he must control the rules, blah, blah, blah. So what I need here is a transition sentence. Okay, so this is that entire paragraph where we explain Echo Park. Can you tell me what's missing in this paragraph? That's right, an image. We need to see what the hellscape of Echo Park looks like, don't we? A picture writes 1,000 words, and since this is a short paragraph, it's an excellent place to put in an image of the hood, particularly that Snoop Dogg. I don't know what the character's name, but remember when he gets the drugs from Snoop Dogg. Let's see if we can find a picture of that. Okay, you're right. This paragraph begins with this sentence. This is the topic sentence. Okay, and there's a picture of the world, is the hellscape that is the world of the story, right? Echo Park. And that takes care of that. As I ended that, yes, Alonzo did fall down that slippery slope, but had he been presented with a better world, he might have developed into an honest detective. Might have. Notice that I used might have, because I'm just presenting an idea that has merit. Okay. Okay, and this is my last point about Alonzo acting as the protagonist in this world. Okay. And now we have the next definition of terms, which is the definition of a tragic hero. Now, we've got this all lined up in the outline. Okay, now we have the definition of the tragic hero, and we're using Aristotle's definition, and we have that. Tell me what the one thing is in here that we don't need. That's right. We don't need this. I've already done it. It's up in the earlier part. It doesn't need to be repeated. Once I've made a point, I don't need to go back and remake it. Okay, let's go. Good. And this is, okay, so that paragraph is done. And this is mislabeled, isn't it? It should be number 2. And so to finish up our point, we're going to show that he is operating in a dystopian world. Echo Park depicted as a war zone with boundaries and populated with gangs, crackheads, and thieves. A dystopia is an imagined community or society that is dehumanizing and frightening. Masterclass. Alonzo described this world best. So we have the definition of a dystopia, and we have Alonzo's description of the dystopia. Right? Okay. Okay, so what was the topic sentence of that paragraph? That's right. Dystopian world. Every sentence in this paragraph should in some way define and prove that the world of the story is dystopic. Okay? We have the definition, we have Alonzo's own words, and then we have the transition sentence. Wants to teach Jake the world of the story, see if he will, if he could be, a fit partner. At this point in the narrative, Jake realizes the dangers of this world. Okay. We got to fix this, don't we? Because that's not a real transition sentence, since we already described the world. Okay, so I fixed up that little transition sentence. And I changed it to a true transition statement. True to the development of a dystopic plot, the protagonist is not often allowed to grow up into the best version of their personality, positive goals, or noble achievements. Within this dystopian world, Alonzo's character develops tragically as he fails in this. So you can see right here is where we're showing that the definition of a tragic hero, and this is why Alonzo is a tragic hero. And Alonzo is going to remember the 3 big points of our essay. Excessive pride and disrespect for the natural order of things. Alonzo is so fixated on projecting his royal image that he ignores the essentials. In addition, Alonzo makes choices which bring about his destruction. Right? So this is that paragraph where we indicate the 3 things that Alonzo does that make him a tragic hero. And then this is our transition to the the major issues of the essay. I'm not going to go through all of this, but I'm going to show you very quickly how we move this information, and we'll do the same thing for all of the outline, how we move it from here to the rough draft. First of all, we don't include any of this other stuff. It'll only confuse us. So we'll go down here, we copy, we go over to the rough draft, which I've already started, and I've made my notes to myself because you know how I am. I have the title. I changed the image because this is an essay about Alonzo. The fact that he's in a buddy situation is not the most important thing about the essay. And I decided to put a black frame because it's a dark movie. Okay. Now this is where I popped over from the outline. Okay. So all I have to do is take this back. Right. I go back to the outline. And I can see where I left off. I'm going to grab this. And I'm going to go back over to the rough draft. Okay. And I think this may be a little bit overwritten. That means that there's too much content that's fussy. It doesn't need to be that much, because this is all going to be 12 font. I might as well just do it from the start with 12 font. Okay. And let's go ahead and do it the way it's supposed to be. And I'll show you in a second. Okay. Okay. This part's too futzy. I'm going to edit it. But first, I want to go back and get everything that's in that introduction, and then I'll edit it from there. Okay, here's our all-important thesis statement. Copy, because I've got to put this all in my... Okay, and then what was the last part of it? I'm just going to show you this one. I'm going to end this tutorial. And I put this in. Of course, there's misspellings that are going to have to be fixed. That's why they call this a rough draft. Okay. All I want you to do is just watch me clean up this introduction, and then I'm going to conclude this tutorial. All right, so let's just see. How do I fix this? Well, first of all, it's too much content. It's too big. This is way too long for an introductory paragraph. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to come here, and I'm going to make sure it's in the right font, which is Times New Roman, and it's 12. And we're going to take out that. Okay, so now we have it all in the right thing. This is a mess. All right, so we're going to go in here. We're going to start. I'm going to go ahead and do it this way. Whoops, I'll be right back. Indent the first line. One of the reasons the 2001 film thriller Training Day remains a classic is the development of the two protagonists who must face their demons as they pursue crime in the East Los Angeles neighborhood of Echo Park. The two men set out on an adventure that is to be Jake's introduction to the life as a police officer on the mean streets of L.A. Alonzo presents himself as a tragic hero as, quote, a man didn't become a hero until he could see the root of his own downfall. That's an Aristotle quote. Okay, Alonzo presents himself as a tragic hero See that? Perfect. Alonzo's resume is admirable. To the outside world, Officer Harris appears to be above reproach in his determination to protect and serve. On the morning of his training day, I'm going to fix this. Oh, well, I'm going to have you watch me fix this. And then on the morning... The film opens on Jake. Alonzo's assigned rookie. Okay, that's just too much. I have 38 cases pending trial. I have 63 active investigations. There's another 350 cases on the log I can't clear. I'm supervising 5 officers. That's 5 different personalities, 5 different sets of problems. Clearly a buddy film. Training day. Features the relationship of rookie Jake Hoyt and seasoned detective, a tragic hero. Well, I've already said that. Okay, let's find that. Let's go back over to the outline. I'm going to pop it in at the bottom. Just in case I need it later. Now let's look at what it looks like when it's double spaced. And this makes the margins real pretty at the edge. I just switched it. And I do this one paragraph at a time. I don't try to do it to the whole essay because it messes stuff up. Okay, let's add, now we're going to make this into double spaced, and we're also going to remove space after the paragraph. That will keep us from having any of those gaps that happen sometimes with double spacing. Not too bad. Let's read it and see. One of the reasons the 2001 film thriller Training Day remains a classic is the development of the 2 protagonists who must face their demons as they pursue crime in the East neighborhood of Echo Park. The 2 men set out on an adventure that is to be Jake's introduction to life as a police officer on the mean streets of LA. Okay, let's just change this. This day is to be rookie Jake's introduction to life as a police officer on the mean streets of L.A. Seasoned detective Alonzo Harris presents himself as a tragic hero who can eventually, quote, see the root of his own downfall. That's the Aristotelian quote that we used. Very good. Alonzo's resume is admirable. To the outside world, Officer Harris appears to be above reproach in his determination to protect and serve. Alonzo brags about his accomplishments to Jake. We already know who Jake is. I just said it. I have 38 cases pending. I have 63 active investigation. There's another 350 cases on the log I can't clear. I'm supervising 5 officers. That's 5 different personalities, 5 different sets of problems. Alonzo struggles against fate, makes choices which bring about his destruction, and fails to take responsibility for his narcissistic greed. Alonzo struggles against fate, makes choices which bring about his destruction, and fails to take responsibility for the narcissistic greed that is his tragic flaw. Destined for greatness, Alonzo crosses the line from integrity to greed, and that is when his life becomes a disaster. A working knowledge, this is our transition sentence, a working knowledge of the film's key terms is necessary to establish Alonzo as a tragic hero. Nice introduction, huh? Real nice. Now we just go back to the outline. We'll still be able to see where we just were. Okay, and now we have the first paragraph of the definition of terms. Okay, so copy this. Okay, go back to the essay. And now because we clicked that don't add, well, it did, didn't it? It added that extra space. So, okay, that does it. Okay. Right? So we're going to pop this in there and we're going to clean it up. Okay, good, good, good. Just bring this over. Clean it up by highlighting it, making it Times New Roman, 12 font, which is what's going to be required. We're going to remove all color. We're going to double space it. And we're going to remove the space after paragraph and hope it works. Okay. Next paragraph. The Buddy Film Training Day takes the viewer on an adventurous day in the lives of protagonists Jake Hoyt and Alonzo Harris. Young rookie LAPD officer Jake Hoyt joins his new mentor at a Los Angeles coffee shop at 7th and Whitmer. As naive as Jake is, just that much more cocky and intimidating is Alonzo. 3 key misadventures take place within the world of the film that force Jake to mature and forces, when we change everything to present tense, forces Alonzo, because of his tragic flaw, to regress. Alonzo, meanwhile, is to show Jake the streets and then determine whether or not Jake is fit to be on his team. Very nice. What we need right here is that image that we chose not to use as the title image, since we went with that. And we're going to go with this one where, because we have a short paragraph, it's always kind of neat to insert a picture right there. So we have our pictures over here. Let's do that one where that one. And we're going to go up here. We're going to do that, and then with this thing. Picture border is in black. Nice. See that? We're all going to look the same. Basic same color. And picture position. Let's put this one on the right. Okay, so now this guy goes right down here. And the picture should always go right up to the margin. Nice. Beautiful. And see, the reason that we don't do this right justify when it's something like this is because if we did all this, it would make it a mess. You just can't do it right over there where you have a picture on the right, but you can do the rest of the paragraph. So, it's not too bad. It did the whole thing. But there you go. All right. We're 2 paragraphs into this deal. We're already into the definition of terms. Hooray, hooray, hooray. Okay. I think these margins are off up here, so I'm going to work on that. And I'll pick this up tomorrow when everything is transferred over here and we prepare the final draft. But this is what we're going to do. Back and forth, back and forth. Back from the outline, pop it in over in the rough draft. That concludes this tutorial. See you tomorrow.